Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan here, and we're going to finish off our NFC East preview, and it went by like that. We've had Greg Cosell with us for Dallas, Washington, New York, and of course he's going to be with us here as he is right now, and you can see him if you're watching, to help us through the Eagles. This one will be a little bit longer. We're going to get into everything involved, talk a little bit about the offseason, talk a little bit about what's going to go, what we should expect both schematically. Greg will give us his tape breakdown. And in some cases, like with Jalen Hurts, there's not a lot of tape, but we'll do our best to, let everybody know what Greg has seen and kind of give an idea. This is the wild card kind of team, guys, because, I mean, we talked about Dallas and they have the offense. You know, if you're going to take an offense from the NFC East, you're probably taking Dallas. If you're going to take a defense from the NFC East, you're probably taking Washington. We talked about the Giants being one of those teams that's improved on both sides of the ball, and that makes them intriguing. To me, the Eagles, Greg and Adam, are a wild card in that they've got, I would almost call it the boomer bust potential here. You really don't know. You can see things coming together. You can see things falling apart. I mean, it's really hard for me to sit here and say I know what the 2021 Eagles are going to be on any side of the ball. Is that fair to you guys?
Well, I guess you can't decide if they'll be 14-2 or 16-0.
Exactly. I'm having a real problem. I'm going to go with 15 wins this year and just split the difference.
Actually, there's 17 games. Yeah, 15-2.
First of 5 straight.
That's right.
Super
Oh
Bowls.
God, I have to get. You know, it's so funny. I got to get
weird.
into that mode that there's 17 games now.
Yeah,
It's too weird.
It's
still weird.
Very weird. Yeah.
I mean, Geoff, look, there's upside on offense. There's no question. If for a minor miracle this offensive line stays healthy for at least 15 games, this offense could be pretty intriguing. We'll get into Greg's tape breakdown on Jalen Hurts and see what he thought of his tape last season. But the receiver core is young and very gifted. They're one of 2 NFL teams to not have a vested veteran on their roster at the wide receiver position. That's almost hard to believe, but that's true for now. Okay, so they're young, but you like that. You'd rather be younger and fast and explosive and talented than older and breaking down. But defensively, new scheme. Offensively, we think it's going to be more of a West Coast offensive timing-based offense. So that's a great thing, Geoff, as you set it up really well. We think we might know, but we really don't know because they're new. These coaches are new here. They're new to these players, and there have been a lot of changes personnel-wise, so we'll see what happens.
Greg, what's the most difficult question you kind of had to answer in your review of the Eagles and your tape study of the Eagles and trying to figure out what they might be this year?
I think there's 2 basic questions. There's more, but I think the 2 that stand out are the quarterback and the secondary. And until you have a sense of that, I think it's almost impossible to decide what they are, what they can be, what they will be. Because as we know, if you don't have quality quarterback play, it's very difficult to perform consistently in this league. And if you cannot stop the passing game in the NFL, it's also very difficult to play in this league. So neither one of those things I just said is profound. Any Eagles fan knows that. We'll obviously address it in more detail momentarily. But I think those are the 2 main issues that we need answers to.
Sure. And let me ask you about a third thing, because you always say, hey, look, I say what the tape tells me.
Yep.
There's really no biases. It's just all about the film. But in fairness, you're also a guy who, as you've said on our show many times, I mean, you talk with NFL head coaches, you talk with executives, you have your ear to the league as well. So I just want to know how much you knew about Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon before they were Eagles coaches. Were these names that you had heard before in any capacity as far as future this or future that?
I knew the names. I did not know much about them, to be honest.
Okay.
They're not coaches that I know personally. They're not coaches I've heard mentioned when I've spoken to coaches I do speak to on a regular basis. So I knew of them. I certainly knew their backgrounds, but I didn't really know specifically a lot about them. As Adam said, well, let's start here. What's interesting about Nick Sirianni is this. He comes from a particular background. And he has a couple of different offensive philosophies in his background because he was with Phillip Rivers in San Diego, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yep.
I think he was the wide receivers coach at that point, though. Yeah.
That offense was not a pure West Coast, okay? But then he was with Frank Reich, who was has multiple offensive philosophies in his background because he was also in San Diego with Phillip Rivers, but he was also in Philadelphia with Doug Peterson, and Doug's offense came from Andy Reid, which does have West Coast methodology. Shane Steichen was brought from San Diego to be the offensive coordinator. He's not a pure West Coast guy. The Chargers offense, and it may well have been a function of the quarterback once they started playing Justin Herbert, that was not a pure West Coast offense. So, and that term, a lot of people would tell you it doesn't have a whole lot of meaning anymore because so many teams run so many of the same route concepts, and it's just how they get to them and situational football. So every coach has a philosophy and a general approach because you've got to teach it, and you can't teach 5 different philosophies. As Adam knows, it will probably be more of West Coast based than not, but I don't think it will be 100% exclusive.
Yeah. Sure. And obviously
more timing based. I was just going to say it was more timing based off whatever you want to call it. It's what we understand really since February. It's going to be more of a timing based offense. And to me, the quarterback has got to have precise accuracy, which is just not going to work. So that's something just to keep an eye on. Yeah.
And to add to that, one thing we learned, Greg, that we reported a while back is that from what we understand, the expectation is that wide receivers in this offense are going to be allowed to make their own sight adjustments, and it's going to be on the quarterback to have that nonverbal communication with the receiver and know where to put the ball.
That takes time, Geoff. That takes time.
I wanted to get into it.
That's not going to happen right away. And again, there's nothing wrong. I mean, look, you can build an offense like that and you can be great, but that doesn't happen overnight.
Are there certain offenses or teams that do that stick out to you that are really good at that because they've had that time together?
Well, the Patriots were really well known for that when Brady was there, and he had receivers like Edelman, Welker, and smart receivers, and a lot was done on the move. But your quarterback and your receivers have to read leverage of defenders, have to understand coverages. There's a lot that goes into that, and you're dealing with a second-year wide receiver in Jalen Reagor. You're dealing with a first-year wide receiver in Devonta Smith. So that takes a little bit of time. And so I don't want people to think, because what happens in Philadelphia, particularly if it's a slow start, then everybody stinks and you just got to get rid of the staff and you got to get rid of the players and you got to start over. This is going to take a a little bit of time.
Right. By the way, you weren't just talking about the Eagles there, right? I mean, we got that with the Phillies and with the Sixers and the Flyers.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the way it works. But I mean, look, I'm going to tell you right now, and I've said this before, and then I hear on Twitter people say, oh, that's a cop-out. Well, it's not a cop-out because I talk to coaches about this. Most coaches will tell you, offensive coaches, whether they're OCs or quarterback coaches, and I have friends who've been in the league for a long time. Adam will tell you this too. He talks to coaches as well, that when you teach someone a brand new offense, that it takes well more than a year for the quarterback to truly understand everything involved with his offense. Okay. And then it takes well more than a year beyond that to really understand everything about NFL defense. Because unlike college football, where there's a lot of air raid principles, and I've had conversations at some events I've been to with college quarterbacks, they're not even taught about defense. So in the NFL, it doesn't work like that. You can't play quarterback in the NFL without knowing about defense.
Absolutely.
So it takes extra time to learn that as well. And, I've talked to NFL quarterbacks about that. I had a phenomenal conversation last summer during the pandemic with Carson Palmer, who I've known since he was a rookie in the NFL in 2003. And he talked about that. And it just takes time. Now, that doesn't mean you can't line up and play, but if you really want to get into all the details and nuances of everything that's involved in quarterback play, then it takes time.
So I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of the themes I want to touch on with you as we start with the Eagles offense and the quarterback. First, I want to remind everyone, don't be a loser and stop paying full retail price for things you want. Get on Deal Dash. You go to DealDash.com or download the Deal Dash app. When you register, use that promo code ITB and you will get some bonus free bids. That's the promo code ITB on DealDash.com or the Deal Dash app. So let's start with the Eagles offense, and we'll start with quarterback. And I've kind of made I don't want to call it the argument. I've raised the idea that, and this is just my own personal feeling, it's the Eagles are in a little bit of a tricky situation here where they have a year of Jalen Hurts as we sit here right now, and then all these first-round picks and a decision to make about quarterback a year from now. Because as you just said, Greg, I almost don't think it's fair to give a guy, especially a quarterback, 1 year. He could get hurt. He could have a slump. He could get better at the end of the year. And I feel like the discourse around this season is we got a year to find out if Jalen Hurts is going to be the future quarterback for the Eagles. And there are a lot of quarterbacks in this league who are pretty good, who if you judge them just after 1 year, you might think differently about them. And people think I'm anti-Hurts, and here I am giving this guy, more benefit of the doubt than others because I'm saying it's not fair to really judge a guy on a year, but I know the NFL isn't fair in general. So that's just like how we talk. What you just said about just the site adjustments and things taking time to me make me wonder if a year is really enough and if they're doing this thing the right way.
Well, the way I'd answer that is this. They're going to be with Jalen Hurts every day, okay, starting soon. I mean, they've been with him now at times, and then they'll be with him every day. So we're not. Fans are not.
Correct.
We see the game on Sunday or Monday night or Thursday. That's what fans see. And they have their reaction to that. It's good or bad. The coaches will know in their mind after a year whether they believe Jalen Hurts is the guy. Mm-hmm. Even if he doesn't play great, they will know. They may say, hey, from being with him every day, we see the way he prepares. We see the way he assimilates information. We see the way he's processing what he's being taught. It's going to happen. Or they may know after 10 games and 10 weeks, which of course counts training all through training camp, they may say, you know what? This kid is just not going to be able to do what we're teaching. Mm-hmm. They'll know that. Now, they're not going to make an announcement publicly, Geoff, as you know, but they're going to know that, okay? Mm-hmm. So we can't answer that now.
Right.
And all I have, and is because we're not there, and all I have, because I'm not there either in the building, is the 4 games that he started, which I watched in great detail. And yes, it's a different offense, but there's basic route concepts and principles that are part of every offense. So I can speak to his 4 starts. And beyond that, we're in the wait and see business.
So Greg, speaking of that, I know you saw him last year. We talked to you last year. We talked to you after the season. But I know recently you had a chance to go back and watch. What did that tape tell you versus what you saw last year?
I'm just going to people who know me know that there's no agenda. I'm just watching the tape.
Yep.
And if I'm being totally honest, I was disappointed in the tape when I was able to watch all 4 starts in one day, just one after the other, which, however number of dropbacks that were. We know that he has very good movement ability, that you can have a designed run game with him, and that was clearly a featured part of what the previous Eagles coaching staff did. I would imagine that Nick Sirianni and staff will do much of that because he can do that well. Quarterback power, naked sweeps, zone read, quarterback draw, quarterback sweep. There's much you can do with Jalen Hurts in the quarterback designed run game. It was the pass game where there were clear concerns that the tape showed. And I guess watching it, I wasn't surprised for this reason. Quarterbacks who've always had the ability to move, not every single one, but the percentage is higher than lower. They almost all show a tendency to break down and leave the pocket prematurely. Now, at times you can compensate for that with a great improvisational run, and everybody gets excited. But the result of that too often is that you leave throws on the field because you're disrupting the design of the pass game. You're leaving the pocket prematurely. And what really stood out watching these 4 starts was that Hurts lacked at this point, and that has to be clear, at this point, any kind of natural feel in the pocket. He perceived pressure. He broke down in the pocket. He often created his own pressure, which very often happens when you move when you don't have to, because the offensive line blocks a certain way based on the protection call. And if the quarterback is supposed to be in the pocket, they're blocking for the quarterback to be in the pocket, not to move when he shouldn't move. Now, having said that, there were flashes of quality pocket play, especially on throws and I want to be very clear on this, especially on throws where the timing was predetermined by the route concept, such as out routes and fades. Those are spot throws more than pure anticipation throws. So the timing of those throws is predetermined by the route concept.
When you say that, I think of the Jalen Reagor catch. I think in his first start, not the Green Bay game, or maybe it was, I forget. But he threw a really nice fade down the left sideline to Jalen Reagor that impressed a lot of people. I think there was some pressure. I think it was Green Bay. Now that I think about it, pressure on the play, and that was one of those throws that made you say, "All right, this kid can do some things."
And he
like
threw
you
the touchdown
said,
in Jeffrey against the Saints, where they had the zero blitz, the 15-yard touchdown. They had zero blitz, and he threw the back shoulder to Jeffrey, who was Lattimore was on him, and it was a perfectly thrown ball. So there were flashes, but you have to break down the tape and understand what kind of throws he made well and what he has to work on.
Right.
All quarterbacks that have great movement ability and can make second reaction improvisational plays will always give you something and look good at times. There's not one offensive coach in this league that will tell you that they will either draft a quarterback or decide that a quarterback can make it based on his ability to make second reaction plays, because the game's not taught that way.
Sure.
So what I'm saying ultimately, because I watched Hurts in great detail coming out of Oklahoma, is none of this is a surprise. Hurts was a second-round pick, and we don't know whether that's a good pick or a bad pick at this point. And as Adam well knows, I don't think many would have drafted him there, which doesn't make Howie Roseman smart or stupid at this point in time. I'm sure a lot of Eagles fans like to think he doesn't know what he's doing. That's all well and good. I don't get into those conversations. But most people, probably based on Hurts' background, viewed him, I would guess, as more of a late third, fourth round type pick. And hey, who knows? We don't know the answer to this yet. I'm just telling you what the tape showed.
How much of the game of quarterbacking, Greg, is if you could find that balance between those throws that you just said Jalen seemed to be good at, the predetermined, I know where the opening is going to be. We always credit quarterbacks for being able to see the right route and the best throw before the snap. But how much of the quarterbacking is when you don't have that predetermined throw, when it's different, when there's a disguise coverage and you've got to figure it out in the moment?
There's a lot of there's more quarterbacking like that. And most of his throws that were the positive ones came outside the numbers where there's not a lot of bodies. So now you get into throws in the middle of the field. And that's where a lot of young quarterbacks struggle when they come into the NFL. For one simple reason, the symmetry of the field. The hash marks are different. So in college football, there's far more space. In college football, you can play on the outside, on the perimeter, because the wide side of the field is really wide. Okay, there's so much room, it's hard to defend. I remember having a conversation with Kevin O'Connell, who's now the OC for the Rams, who I've gotten to know pretty well over the years. He wanted to get into broadcasting initially, and he was in our broadcast boot camp, and then he got into coaching. But he always had that. I could tell, because when he was in our boot camp, he'd always say to him, "Hey, can we go to your office and watch tape?" So I knew he was going to go into coaching. But he was a third-round pick, I believe, of the Patriots coming out of San Diego State.
Hoyer beat him out. Yeah,
right. And I remember him telling me when we were sitting in my office watching tape, this was after he had retired, saying, I got to the NFL, and it looked like there were 15 defenders on the field, because you have to throw the ball in the middle of the field. And that's different than college football. And a lot of young quarterbacks, particularly with the influx of 7-on-7 and college spread offenses, you don't have to make a lot of throws where there's a lot of bodies.
Right.
I think someone like Marcus Mariota always struggled with that a bit. You'd watch him at Oregon, and you'd see all these seam throws, and there'd be no one around the receiver. And in the NFL, when you make seam throws, there's rarely no one around the receiver.
Right. Greg, you and I had that talk many years ago when Matt Leinart came out of USC. And I remember you telling me, I'm not so sure, because he's got so much room to throw. He's rarely under pressure.
Yep.
Let's just see how he does. And that was the problem when he went to the Cardinals. Condensed pocket. Didn't move all that great.
Right.
Didn't see the field real well.
Not a power thrower, not a big arm.
Right. And it's a different game. It's it's really great points you make here. And based on what you just said, it seems like there's going to have to be some patience here. They got to bring him along. He's going to be the starting quarterback, but you can't he has a game where he's not seeing it well, just be patient.
You got
to coach him.
Look, Adam, you and I, we both know Joe Flacco, okay? I love
Yep.
Joe Flacco as a guy. I mean, I've done work with him here at Films. I've been around him. I love Joe. You love Joe. That's not the point. But the point is even though Joe can probably still throw it really well, you have to find out what Jalen Hurts is. You can't take Jalen Hurts out after 2 weeks if he's not playing well and put in Joe Flacco with the idea that, hey, we're going to, now we're going to win our next 15. You got to see what Jalen Hurts is. It's going to take time. And I don't know Jalen Hurts. I've heard really good things about him from those who've been around him. I know it means something to him. I know he's damn serious about it. You got to give the kid a chance. He's going to have rough moments.
It makes me, wonder. I mean, obviously, Greg, you watch the tape, and we know that division teams, they're all watching tape of division opponents in the offseason. So I'm sure they're seeing the same things you're seeing. Makes me wonder if you'll see the Eagles have to see on defense a lot more zone, a lot more disguise coverage early on to test Jalen's ability to kind of pick that apart.
Let me give you an example. Don't they open with Atlanta?
Yeah,
Atlanta.
Yep. Dean Pease.
Yep. Dean Pease is a master of disguise. He's going to see that week 1. Dean Pease is one of the greats at. And I spoke with Dean Pease last summer. We had a great conversation, and he talked about, one of the things he tries to do, particularly out of the sub packages, when you get to the third down situations, is he wants to show it to the offense that all 11 players could theoretically, not that he's going to rush 11, but of the 11 defenders, that all of them are potential rushers. That you don't know that, before the snap. They're all potential rushers. And he's a master of disguise, where he shows you one thing pre-snap, and then as soon as the ball snap, the defense goes to something else. Right. So it's week 1. You're going to get a very interesting feel for where not only Jalen Hurts. Don't forget, it's not just Jalen Hurts. They've got a second-year wideout in Rager. They've got a rookie wideout in Smith. Look, Devonta Smith, we all love Devonta Smith's tape. He's got high-level receiving traits. Let's put aside the weight. That we're not going to discuss that. That's been discussed. But he still hasn't played in the NFL. It's just different in the NFL. No doubt. These guys have to see it too. It's not just the quarterback.
Right. That is a good transition to wide receiver. We can go over Eagles wide receivers. Dean Pease, though, getting back to him, was he the coordinator for the Ravens when they won the Super Bowl over the 49ers? 5 or 6 years ago?
I can't remember. I know he was with Tennessee, and then he retired. He was out last year, and then he decided to come back because obviously he's got a relationship with Arthur Smith, the new head coach of Tennessee. But I can't remember if Dean was.
I can't remember either. I just know he was with the Ravens as well as their coordinator.
But he was. Remember, he was with New England years ago. Left there, went to Baltimore, went to Tennessee with the Titans.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so he's got the Belichick background. He's got a Rex Ryan background, I think, to some degree. So, no, he's one of the best that's ever done it.
There you go. All right, well, let's talk about these wide receivers. Obviously, they are a young unit. How much time did you spend looking at Travis Fulgham on film? Because he's kind of one of these guys, Greg, that he had those 4 incredible weeks. So you saw the talent was there, and it wasn't just – I don't think we think that it's coincidence. He looked like a good wide receiver who could high point, had great catch radius, good football intellect, but then Alshon Jeffrey came back. He started to come down. This all happened after they came back from the bye week, and he wasn't the same. What was your kind of synopsis on Travis Fulgham?
I liked what I saw. Again, Adam knows more about the personal stuff than I do, and he can certainly jump in. So I can't speak to work ethic. I can't speak to professionalism. I can't speak to any of that. And by the way, that's critically important because every position is a detailed, nuanced position in the NFL. Fulgham is a big kid, runs well. I thought he showed good cutting ability. I thought he made contested catches. There were traits there to like. I can't speak to what happened after. People say, well, he disappeared. That's one of those terms. I don't know what that means, but there's talent there, clearly. At some point, teams study you and they understand, what you like to do, what you rely on on certain routes. They understand that based on splits, you run these routes. You as a receiver have to understand that too. I mean, I was so fortunate years ago I interviewed Larry Fitzgerald for a piece for NFL Films, and it turned out we had a good amount of time. So both before the interview and after the interview, he gave me a freaking master's thesis in wide receiver splits. And, stuff like that is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand that as a receiver. You have to understand how the defense plays you based on your splits. You have to understand where the safeties are. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it that's beyond the fact that Fulgham is a big guy who runs well and can catch the ball, which all that is true. But like I said, Adam may know more than I. If he's not working at it, then eventually, it levels off.
He is super gifted. I think you had actually said this. I heard this from another team, but pretty good route runner for a guy that was a 6th-round pick. He's a little bit older too.
Yeah,
the talent is clearly there. If he brings it every week, the correct attitude of understanding, just because you did 1 week doesn't mean that you're going to do it the next week. If he brings the same attitude all 17 weeks, guys, he has a chance to be like a really good football player. To lead the NFL in receiving yards for 4 weeks, it's not a fluke.
No.
He's super gifted. There's no question. He's got the size. Greg, I thought you told us on the fantasy show how smooth he was.
Yeah, he's not stiff at all for a man that size.
Yeah,
he was fluid in and out of breaks. He's been the talent is there. Now you get into the other issues, which, like I said, there's so much detail and nuance. Again, I always think back to conversations I've had with people because that's the way I learn. Sure, I sit and watch tape, but I'm not the one actually out there playing the game. And I remember Sterling Sharp telling me when he used to work at NFL Films and come into films every week that, you have to understand, based on, let's say, a play that, hey, maybe the route's called for you to make a break at, 14 yards. But if the defense is playing you a certain way, you might have to make that break at 12 yards to be open, and these are nuances you learn and you have to learn. That's why you have position coaches in the NFL. That's their job. The coordinator, he's doing other things, but you have to learn all this stuff. It's all detail.
So, Greg, you had a chance to go back and you talked about watching Hurts, but I know you also saw Jalen Reagor. What did you see from Jalen Reagor?
Well, in the 4 games I watched of Hurts, and I'd watched Reagor obviously throughout the season, but I thought in those 4 games that Reagor looked really explosive. Now, the numbers weren't there for obvious reasons. Hurts was up and down, so the pass game was not efficient overall. But I thought Reagor looked really explosive. Now, I think he needs some work versus press. I think he has a tendency to get squeezed to the sideline and not provide room for the quarterback to throw the ball on vertical routes off of press when he's a split receiver. These are details. But just watching him move, he's an explosive athlete. And I would expect them as part of this offense to, I guess what I'm saying is, how many years was Sirianni in Indy, Adam? Do you know?
3. Yeah, 18, 3. 19, and 20.
That's what I thought. I could see a little T.Y. Hilton in the way they see Reagor. Moving him around, getting him, free access, getting him into routes where he can use his explosive burst. I could see them seeing him that way.
When you look at him, I mean, we know that he's going to play inside and outside in the offense this year, but is there a natural spot where you think he has the ability to flourish? I
mean, to me, and again, then you get into the Devonta Smith issue as well, which I'm sure we'll get into next.
Yes.
Yep.
To me, Reagor is not a true X. Can he line up at X? I think he can, but I think to me, Reagor is a movement guy. You want to line him up all over the formation. You'd love to get him free access, which the X is on the ball. For people that don't know, the X receiver is on the line of scrimmage. He's on the side where the tight end is not. So he has to line up on the line of scrimmage, which means that a corner can be closer to you to press because you're on the ball. You're on the line of scrimmage. I think Reagor would be more at his best as the Z. The Z is on the tight end side, and he's off the ball, so he can go in motion. And when you can put those guys in motion, you tend to get them free access off the ball. And I think Reagor would be really good that way. The thing is, I also think Devonta Smith would be best that way as well.
Right. And didn't you tell us last year you did notice that they moved Fulgham around a little bit?
Yes. Fulgham got moved around a lot. Yeah.
Good.
Fulgham, to me, I don't want to say he's this guy because this guy has succeeded in the league, but I think Fulgham, the way he moves and the size is a little bit like Amari Cooper. Now, we know Cooper's had great success, so I don't want people to sit here and go, oh, Cosell thinks he's Amari Cooper.
Right.
I'm looking at body type and movement and how you can use him within the context of an offense.
All right, I'm going to get you in even more trouble because I was going to ask a question that's similar. With Devontae Smith, a couple of people Adam and I have spoke to, we've gotten a range of kind of comp type names. T.Y. Hilton was actually one. An AFC source gave me Marvin Harrison as a top end kind of comparison. I've even seen Stephon Diggs. So I'm wondering if there's someone, when you look at Devontae Smith and you try to envision a successful receiver, what kind of receiver is he?
Devontae Smith, to me, he's a fluid long strider. He's just 160 pounds, but he's much more of a strider. He's not a loose-hipped, quick in and out of breaks receiver. He's a guy you want to get off the ball, let him get into his stride length. He's a long strider. I mean, I remember, and again, I'm not comparing him to this guy. I'm talking about style, okay? I remember the first time that I saw Randy Moss. I think it was 1998. And obviously Moss is closer to 6'4", but Moss is very thin. It's just, he's obviously like 195 pounds. And I remember watching Moss, and I remember seeing him in motion on one particular play where he went in what they call Zin motion, Z in. So he motioned from outside into closer to the formation, and then the ball was snapped, and he took 3 steps, and it seemed like he covered 20 yards in 3 steps. Smith, to me, is that kind of guy. Smith is a strider. See, I don't see him like Marvin Harrison. I know a lot of people do, and I'm not saying I'm right, but Marvin Harrison to me was much more like, juicier, like quicker, like that. I don't see Smith like that. He's a strider.
Like I'm trying to think of. Go ahead. Is there a good modern comp right now?
Smith, to me, would have been perfect in a Mike Martz offense where you think of Isaac Bruce running those speed cuts where you don't have to sink your hips, get in and out of breaks, where it's the speed cut stuff. That to me is what Devonta Smith is.
Right. That's a good one.
And again, Isaac Bruce is a Hall of Famer, and to me was one of my most favorite receivers to watch. And again, I'm not making the one-on-one comparison that, wow, now we have Isaac Bruce. But to me, that's what Devonta Smith is more like.
Very interesting. Anything left, Geoff, at receiver? Do you want to move on?
Well, I mean, we can just quickly ask him if to round it out here, if he thinks J.J. Arcega-Whiteside has anything, within this offense that. I mean, yeah. And Greg Ward has been reliable.
I like Greg Ward.
I know.
The more I watch Greg Ward, the more I like him. I think, again, I don't know what their plans are. It's a new coaching staff. They come in fresh. I think it's tough to watch Greg Ward's tape and say, boy, we don't like Greg Ward. Now, I'm not sitting here saying he's Julian Edelman or he's the best slot receiver in the game, but I think Greg Ward is a very solid NFL slot receiver.
What gives him the very good ability to get open without having, blazing speed? Is it his, he obviously played quarterback. Do you see a lot of football intelligence as far as his moves go, the way he sets up defensive backs, or is it just natural athleticism? What do you see?
No, I think he understands pace and tempo of routes and how to set up slot corners and how to use their leverage against them. He's got short area quickness. You don't need burning speed to play in the slot. I mean, there's all kinds of slot receivers, obviously. There's not just one type. But I think he has a very good feel. Now, there's a guy that, to me, watching the tape, has a feel for the details of how to do it.
Okay. Good.
It's good.
Yeah.
Pretty
good. And while we're on receivers, Adam, we should throw in tight end here. I'm gonna.
Of course, yeah, of course.
I don't think we need to get into Zach Ertz. We know what he is, and I still don't think he's going to be on the team. But Dallas Goedert should probably be the prominently featured tight end, Greg. And you've liked Goddard and Vaz. You like his explosion, right?
It's just injuries. I mean, it seems like he has not been able to get into a flow. Ideally, he's the number one tight end. You're also dealing with Sirianni, where he came from, where they played 2 and 3 tight ends in Indianapolis. So I'd be very curious if Ertz is not here, who that second guy will be. I know they re-signed Richard Rodgers. They've got other guys on the roster that, I've always thought Jason Kroom was a very intriguing guy. He was an SEC player who went to college as a wide receiver, and they made him a tight end. I don't know if he becomes the Eagles' version of Mo Alley Cox, who is a basketball player and, a really good athlete. Again, you're starting from scratch with a lot of these players because you have a new coaching staff. So I could be talking about guys that get cut tomorrow. I don't know the answer to that.
The one thing you've told us over the years about Goddard is, and when you compare him to Ertz, he's like he's more of a fluid mover. What does the tape show you about Goddard? Yeah. What does the tape show you about Goddard when you watch about his exposure?
Yeah, I think Goddard is much more of an intermediate and vertical threat than Ertz. Ertz, to me, is a master at the short to intermediate type routes where he just understands leverage. He understands how to get open. He understands how to play off defenders. Ertz is a master at that. Goddard is a vertical receiver, much more so. Even in the screen game, he can stride out. Ertz is not that kind of mover. I remember Goddard, it was probably 2 years ago that he caught a touchdown.
It called back.
No, against when did he catch the touchdown against Dallas?
It was Dallas. It was an offensive pass interference.
No, it discounted. I think they lost the game.
The one that didn't count for 75 yards?
Yeah, but he ran an over route.
Yeah.
He ran an over route.
Okay.
And Jeff Heath it was 2 years ago because Jeff Heath wasn't with Dallas last year.
Yeah.
And, that was a vertical route, an over route. And he just had that kind of ability, and I think that's, look, to me, Goddard is a complete tight end. He just needs to be able to play a full season and stay healthy.
There you go. All right. We want definitely, I can't wait for your assessment of this offensive line because of how new and some guys coming back healthy. First, I want to, go through a word from our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings Sportsbook is not only our favorite sportsbook, but America's top-rated sportsbook. We love using DraftKings Sportsbook, easy to navigate, plenty of instructions for new bettors, and nearly limitless ways to get in on all the action. Our friends and our family have been loving DraftKings Sportsbook, and we know you will too. So listen to this great offer. DraftKings Sportsbook is putting you courtside with a chance to turn $1 into $100 in free in-site credits. That's right. Pick any basketball team still in contention, bet $1, and if that team wins, you win $100 in site credits. So don't forget, DraftKings Sportsbook also offers great odds and promotions on baseball, hockey, and so much more all week long. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. You can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. So download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code ITB when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 in free credits. Bet on the basketball team of your choice to win its next game. If it wins, you claim $100 in free credits. That's promo code ITB for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. You have to be 21 or older, Pennsylvania only, new customers only. Wager paid out in site credits. Restrictions apply in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Greg, obviously the breakdown of the offensive line last year was, I think we can all say was contributed to the breakdown in their offensive dysfunction.
Yeah, they had more offensive line combinations than any team in the league.
Yeah, and it showed. I mean, on one hand, as we fast forward, it's good some of these guys got some tape and got a chance to play. It was just bad that it happened at that last year and everything fell apart. But you've got Brandon Brooks coming back. You've got Lane Johnson coming back. Jason Kelsey back for another year. Sayamalo left guard, and then we'll get into this left tackle battle between Jordan Mailata and Andre Dillard. But we've both made the argument that theoretically, on paper, if these guys are healthy and performing to nearly the level that you expect from them, this is a pretty good offensive line and should really help out this young quarterback and young wide receivers.
I think the only question with the O-line is left tackle. Otherwise, I think it's a really solid group.
Yeah, no doubt. Brandon Brooks said he came back as the best right guard in football after his first Achilles. When you watch him, when he's healthy, what makes Brandon Brooks an excellent right guard?
Well, I go back to when I watched him coming out of college, and I was amazed at how light on his feet he was for a man that size. So I think he's a complete player. I think Brandon Brooks is just a really solid offensive guard. I think he's big, he's physical, and he's really light on his feet. So, hopefully he can come back and be a really good player. I think they drafted Landon Dickerson for the Kelsey factor, and the the Brooks factor, because you don't know. Kelsey's getting older. He might retire after this year. I think that's probably the plan. But he starts to get nicked up. Brooks is hopefully not a question mark, but you don't know. So that's why Dickerson, who can play either center or guard. But I think if everything works the way it's supposed to, we just have to figure out who's going to play left tackle. And I got to tell you, in watching the 4 Hurts games at the end of the year, I kind of thought, and again, I don't want my buddy Duke Manyweather, the guys who really know O-line play, to get mad at me, because I'm not an expert on all the techniques of O-line play by any means. But I thought Mulata struggled a bit in those 4 games. I'm just curious, I don't know. Look, it's a new coaching staff. You just don't know. So I don't, obviously they did not draft Dillard, but Howie Roseman did, and Howie's still there. So, I don't know whether that's, Adam may know more about this than I do. I don't know if they view that as a competition or if it's Mulata's job to lose, but I personally would view it as a competition.
Oh, it's definitely a competition with Mailata as the favorite. But, based on what you just said, I know it's only 4 games, because I know you also like tape earlier in the season of him. It's not like you said, okay, these 4 games is it, and he's not good enough.
No, and I'm not saying that he can't play. I just think that, and again, you're dealing with a guy that has almost no experience. So I don't want to paint him with a brush for now his whole career that, hey, get rid of him, he can't play. Right. But I thought he had some struggles. And
when you say that,
technique struggles, because he's such a big man that there's no reason pass rushers should get inside of him. Okay. And that's the technique thing. And pass rushers were getting inside of him.
Got it.
It's been, we've said it on our show, and I heard, interestingly, Quentin Michael and Jason Avant said it on their show on our platform, Q&A. They said if you took Jordan Mailata's just his physical play and his defense against bull rushers, and you took Andre Dillard's footwork and speed rusher ability, pass pro, and put them together, you might have a Hall of Fame left tackle right there. It's funny how these guys seem to do the opposite better than the other. Well,
Dillard was drafted because he has really light feet. Dillard is what people look for at left tackle because, I don't want to say he's quite a dancing bear, but Dillard has the kind of feet when you watched his tape coming out of college, you went, that guy's a left tackle. He's got left tackle feet. That's what people say. As an aside, I think left tackle and right tackle are now pretty much the same the way the league is. But people for years and years, left tackle was always viewed as the more important position. And people say he's got left tackle feet. Dillard has left tackle feet. He struggled with the bull rush. People got into him and he didn't have any strength. He couldn't anchor. Now, like I said, I'm not the expert here, so I'm not going to sit here and say that's fixable or not fixable. But if it ends up still being a problem, then he can't be the guy because the good pass rushers will just drive him right back into the pocket.
Landon Dickerson, Greg, from talking to personnel people, and I know you can't – right, okay. You can't take the injuries away. That's why he was in the second round. But this is one of the best linemen, some guys that I really trust.
Yep.
I've looked at – from an interior lineman standpoint, one of the best guys they've graded in like 10 years. So what did the tape tell you when you saw him?
Oh, love the guy. First of all, he's big. I mean, you lose sight of that, how big he is. He is a big dude, and he's a tempo setter. He's nasty. He's physical. He's one of those guys. You can play him at guard. You can play him at center. I loved his tape. He's one of those guys, again, not getting into all the details because I don't know all, is the hand placement right on every play? Sure. I'm not going to go there, but I just think he's, again, the injuries are the injuries. He's had a bunch. Assuming they don't flare up, he'll be starting at some point. Now, maybe not this year, but he's going to be a starter, and he's a good player.
We've talked about, him being the natural replacement for Jason Kelce. If Jason Kelce moves on after this year, which based on his contract, right, Adam, it's pretty likely he's only got 1 year left.
If he decides he wants to play, it'll be on a new deal. They'll have to redo it. So for next season. And look, theoretically, I think both sides would assume that Jason would retire, but I wouldn't say that because he's healthy. I happened to see him 3 weeks ago at a golf tournament. He looked great. He always waits to the end of the season. Look, again, if he wants to come back next year, it's actually a good thing if he's playing well, and then they'll have to make a decision what they're going to do with Dickerson, where they're going to line him up.
Right.
So I wonder, Greg, just because Dickerson, a mauler, physical, and I almost wonder if it's better to have him at left guard, maybe move Seumalo to center because Seumalo has that abilities. Because when you have a specimen like that, I almost think it's more advantageous for the line to have him at guard instead of center, being the nature of the position. Is there some sense to that, you think, or does it not matter?
Yeah, I can't. I don't know
That's
if
an
I'm
offensive line expert question.
I don't know if I'm the guy to speak to that. I mean, Seumalo, I think they probably had internal discussions all through the last couple of years as to whether he's best at guard or center. I don't know what conclusion they've come to. They'll have the same conversations about Dickerson. They probably had those conversations about Dickerson before they drafted him as to where they see him down the road. Because Seumalo, didn't he just sign a new deal too?
No, he restructured.
Restructured.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey,
But
one thing though,
Greg,
on Landon Dickerson, it's so rare for a center to be over 6'5". He's 6'5" and a half.
I know.
Right. That is that, and I know again, we don't want to get too deep into this, but when you watch offensive line play, is it? I mean, not that you would know every time you look at a center how tall he is, but does that matter to you that if he does play center that he is so tall? Does it matter?
I don't know if look, I can tell you for a fact that you don't want to short. So there's a lot of coaches who will say, have a standard in terms of height for certain positions. And if a center is shorter than whatever, they might not even have them on their board. I don't think it's a detriment by any means. I mean, I think when you get in the 6'4", 6'5" range for offensive linemen, you feel pretty good about that. So again, we don't know if they see him as a center. We don't know if they see him as a guard. Maybe Seumalo is the center, next year if Kelsey's gone, and Dickerson is at left guard. But I don't think it's a detriment. He's a very physical, competitive player.
Did you like what you saw last year in Jack Driscoll? Because Jeff Stoutland loves this guy.
I can't speak a whole lot to that. I didn't study him. You notice the bad plays more than the good plays, but and I did not do him coming out, so I can't really speak to Driscoll. Look, offensive line coaches always have guys that they really like, that they feel they can coach to become really good players. I don't know where Driscoll fits into this deal because Lane Johnson, barring anything unforeseen, is going to be here for a while. So Driscoll's not going to play right tackle, and he's not. I don't think he would be seen as competing for the left tackle job. So the question is, do they see him as a right guard? In other words, if Brandon Brooks, for whatever reason, if the injuries have taken their toll and he can't play, is Driscoll the right guard? I don't know.
That's a strength issue. I know the way that the teams had looked at him for him to play guard.
By the way, I was going to say when I saw the bad plays at tackle, it was a strength issue. He got moved.
Yeah. Right. I do know coming out, they liked his positional versatility. They felt year one, for what the reasons you guys are talking about, that right tackle specifically, would be a better value for him because he could probably play that easier. But we'll see what he did this offseason, if he added any weight or bulk, and if they see any kind of interior line in his future. Anybody else on the offensive line? How about LaRaven Clark? I mean, is that some guy? Is that someone that you kind of seen in the past, Greg, and have an opinion on?
LaRaven Clark was fascinating when he came out of college because, as Adam knows, and you know too, Jeff, what is one thing people always talk about with offensive tackles? Arm length.
Length. I was just going to say it. Yep.
His arm length was off the charts, but he's never become a quality starter in the league. I haven't studied him in detail, but I remember he had like 36.5-inch arm length. It was ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
It was off the charts. But he's basically, he's probably a really solid backup that if you had to line him up, you can play him. I think like guys who guard too. I think he's played some guard too.
So. He has. He got a 1-year deal. It's basically a 1-year veteran minimum deal. He gets a little bit of a bonus if he's on the week 1 roster, Jeff. So he's just going to be a backup. But we don't even know if he'll be ready for week 1. Right. It might tie into he's got a $75,000 bonus for being active week 1. So we'll see. But I'll say this much for the future, guys, past the season, Dickerson, Mailata, or Dillard will be one of the two. Driscoll, one more guy, Greg, because the perfect guy to see, because this guy played a lot.
Who is
Nate Herbig could be a part of that. Let's talk about Nate Herbig for a sec. What do you think?
Nate Herbig, from what I understand too, has dropped some weight. And,
he did.
He did. He's an interesting guy. I thought, he's had some struggles, but he had some good moments. came from a really good college program at Stanford where they, do a lot of NFL type stuff in the run game. So he's another guy that's going to be in the guard mix as they go forward. I mean, it's funny. And it's always about health because last year, obviously, it all fell apart, and they had to put the three of us out there to play offensive line. But they're kind of building up an interesting offensive line if people can stay healthy. Dickerson obviously is critical to this because when you draft a guy in the second round, you expect him to be a starter by year 2, and that's what they expect. Herbig, he could end up being a starter as well down the road. Sayamalu, Sayamalu's a solid NFL player.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Obviously Lane Johnson is not old. So, you're counting on, they're hoping that either Dillard or Mulata, neither one is old, that becomes the left tackle. And you can line that guy up at left tackle and you're good to go. So again, we don't know the answers as we sit here, end of June, beginning of July, but this could turn out to be a pretty good group with some good depth.
All right. Let's transition to the Eagles defense, Greg.
Actually, running back. Let's go running back.
Did we forget? Of course. I'm sorry about that. Let's transition to running back and finish off this offense.
Yeah, Miles Sanders, he's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to the deep. No, it's funny though because Miles was criticized last year, and I thought the offense was so dysfunctional that it was hard to criticize him. Not for the drops. You can certainly criticize him for not catching balls, but for almost being too much of a boom bust type of runner. He had like 3 or 4 rushes over 70 yards. I think most in the NFL. And he had some really good games, I felt, against tough teams like Pittsburgh and Baltimore. But in the bigger scheme, people were on him for, disappearing, as you said. That's kind of a phony word, but having good games and then not having good games. But what was your overall of him?
I actually thought that he ran harder last year than in any previous season. He's playing behind makeshift offensive lines. I thought he improved last year. I don't care what the numbers say. I'm watching the tape, and I thought he ran hard. The big question with Miles Sanders, and it may not be a factor because of people they drafted and signed, is I don't know if he's truly an 18 to 20 carry a game back.
Mm-hmm.
He may be more of he's not as good as this player, but he may be more of an Alvin Kamara type, where that he gets 180 carries and is ideally really good in your pass game as well, but he's not a foundation 270 carry a year back. He may be more that guy. I think that's one reason they signed Jordan Howard, brought him back. I think it's one reason they signed Kerryon Johnson. I love Kenneth Gainwell. I think he's more of a pass receiver at this point early in his career, although I think he does have good running ability, as Adam knows from knowing his former head coach. But I think that they're probably counting on a guy like Kerryon Johnson, who was either a second or third round pick of Detroit and is a big physical running type kid. Look, we know what happened in Indy last year. Jonathan Taylor over the last 6, 7, 8 weeks of the season became the guy, but Jonathan Taylor's 225 pounds.
Right.
Miles Sanders, I don't know. I don't think he's that guy. And I love Miles Sanders, and I thought he improved, but I really don't believe he's that guy.
That's fine because, if you think about it, Brian Westbrook was not that kind of
he was not that guy either.
He wasn't that guy until maybe 2006 and 2007, where he got his body ready for it. And but even still, Andy would give Carell Buckhalter a decent number of totes there, or somebody else.
Did have 278 carries in 2007. I just looked it up.
It was the touch total. Yeah, it was, guys. It was the touch total was incredible.
Yeah.
3 years in a row.
He also had 90 receptions. But
then that's the point. Right.
But that almost ended his career.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. Knee injuries.
You say that, but remember, he came in from Villanova. He had a torn ACL at Villanova.
Yeah.
That surgically repaired knee shortened his career. He was, as you well know, because you saw the tape, one of the most gifted running backs we've ever seen here. And the other thing is Brian built his body up over time. Whereas this kid, Sanders, he's not 190. He's 205, 210, whatever, probably closer to 210. But he's gifted. But I like Greg's point.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't look like the guy you're going to give the ball, just from a carry standpoint, 15 plus times a game. He might be 13, 14-ish, but might be 3 or 4 in the passing game. If you get him 15 to 17 times a touch total, guys, it's got a chance to be really special. He's shown that. But as you said, Geoff, the drops are a little bit concerning. I don't Greg, I know offhand it's hard to grade every drop. Was it more of a function of some were throws that were low from particularly with Wentz, or was it just concentration drops that you can remember?
That's always hard to know, Adam, why a guy drops the ball. I mean,
gotcha.
Yeah, that's hard. But I mean, the point is you got to catch those. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to catch those. We'll see. I mean, he also had some great receptions in the previous year, so you don't know. But I think that they're well aware that he's not a guy who's really should be out there for 70 snaps a game.
Right. But I do agree with you. I thought last year he picked up some pretty good short yardage first downs by running hard that he did. And even at the goal line, I think he had a couple of touchdowns that were short yardage from just good hard running. So I credit him. I don't know how many backs.
Look, how many backs, I should probably know the answer to this. How many backs are normally on a roster? 5?
No, probably 4.
Yeah, no, rarely do the team's going to keep 5 because the guy is generally just a special.
Because I mean, to me, if this plays out the way I think the Eagles want it to play out, and again, new staff, so you don't know that with certainty, I would think it would be Sanders, it would be Johnson, it would be Gainwell, and who's the 4th?
Probably Howard. I think.
All right, so it's Howard and Boston Scott. Is he gone?
Yeah, I don't see them keeping 5.
Adam and I have kind of debated this back and forth. I would see. I don't understand why you would keep Howard and Johnson. I feel like
Scott. I mean,
I feel like Boston. It gives you a little more versatility.
Scott does that Gainwell doesn't do much better.
Exactly.
That's fair too.
Gainwell's going to be on this roster with Sanders and Howard probably and Kerryon Johnson. Yeah, I just that's a pretty good group, by the way. They got versatility. Johnson's a guy who's a little bigger physically, and also he's a really good pass protector. This is a good group, guys. I think they could go forward with this group, and when they're in a game, I think they could handle it.
Absolutely. They've got guys for all downs and all scenarios and all situations, which is very important. All right, now we can transition to the defense. We will start with the defensive line. A little bit like our conversation, Greg, about the offensive line, whereas you've got experience, you've got talent. When healthy, it's still a pretty good defensive line, at least from a starting standpoint. Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, and Derek Barnett, I assume, will be the other starter. I want to ask you specifically about Hargrave first, because he really started slow. He had the injuries in training camp. He had the pec, and then he had a hammy, so he missed basically all of training camp.
He came on
first few weeks. That's what I noticed.
Good. He's. I think if he can stay healthy, you'll really see a really good Javon Hargrave because he can rush the quarterback. He's not just a big body in the middle of your defense. He's a pretty athletic kid. He was a pass rusher in college.
Right.
I thought he came on toward the end of the year. I can, in my mind's eye, now see snaps where he just won one-on-one as a pass rusher. I think this is a good group. I mean, Fletcher Cox is getting older. I don't think he plays every snap as well as he once did. But again, who knows? I think that they've got really good depth. I thought Josh Sweat really played well a year ago. Every year he's further removed from that really bad injury he had in college or just before college. I forget when he had it, but he's getting better and better. I really liked Milton Williams coming out of Louisiana Tech. I think he can play tackle or end. They signed Kerrigan, who I still think if you play him 20 snaps a game or 25 snaps a game, he can really be a factor. He just knows how to rush the quarterback. He knows how to play. Ridgeway is an intriguing player as well as a rotational player. This is a very deep defensive line group.
Did you see Tui Pelotu at all from USC?
Yeah, I liked him a lot.
What did you see from him?
Quick, really quick. I think he can be an NFL player. I mean, I like the pick. I mean, to me, again, I don't do rounds, as you know, Adam, but just based on my sense of his ability, based on his tape, I saw him as better than a 6th-round pick.
Right. I think there was maybe some injury questions about him that might have knocked him down, and that's why people I've spoken to thought that was a maybe kind of a steal type pick. Not that you're getting a Pro Bowler, but like you're saying, Greg, someone a little bit more who offers more value than your traditional 6th-round pick.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just pulled up my my evaluation, and I said he was a strong interior D-line prospect given his physical and athletic skill set and his versatility to play multiple D-tackle positions effectively. Showed the first step quickness off the ball to be effective as a one-gap penetrator, as a one technique or 3 technique, and he played with needed balance and body control to allow that quickness to be maximized. I have a lot more, obviously, but I mean, I liked him. He was a fun player to watch. I mean, plays hard. He competed on every snap with high intensity. I really enjoyed watching this kid.
That's a really great trait to have, especially as a rookie. One guy before we get to linebacker, Derek Barnett seems to be an enigma. Sometimes you see him and he's explosive. Other games he fades. We know he's had some injury issues. He's a mystery wrapped up in a riddle. What Derek Barnett, his tape from last season in particular, what did you see from him?
Yeah, you almost hit it on the head. You're always wanting to see more because you feel like there's more. But I don't think he's ever developed into that consistent edge player. It's funny. When he came out, and I turned out to be wrong. He came out the same year as a player from, I believe, Missouri, Charles Harris.
Yes.
Yep, exactly.
Yep. And I thought Harris was the better prospect. I was wrong. Harris has been with 2, 3, 4 teams.
He's actually out of the league. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
he was definitely considered the more explosive athlete. I remember that.
Because I did not see Barnett as explosive.
Right.
And I did not see him as truly bendy and flexible. And I think that's played out to some degree. So I don't know. I think, is this the last year of a contract, Adam?
Yeah, he's still on his 5th-year option. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a big year for him. I mean, because I think that if he does not play well this year, or if he gets hurt again, I think that he's not going to get the contract with the Eagles, I don't believe.
Interesting that you brought up that you didn't see him as bendy and flexible, because that really was what was supposed to be his calling card coming out and why he set the sack record at Tennessee, because he didn't have great natural speed and burst, but he was considered one of the best at edging and bending underneath those offensive tackles.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I have my notes on him coming out, because let's see, 2017 draft prospects. I have it somewhere. Derek Barnett.
I hate to use the term flash player, but there are games where you just watch him and you think that's why they picked him for. I mean, you remember that San Francisco game? He edged Trent Williams and made a stop behind the line of scrimmage. And then
here's what I said. In my transition. Here was my first line. He's an intriguing transition to the NFL. He is not a great athlete. He is not a purely explosive, quick twitch edge rusher with flexibility and bend. He's more measured than explosive in his movement. So, and I even said not as sudden or quick twitch as Missouri DN Charles Harris, who's a more naturally explosive mover. And Harris hasn't made it. So, I mean, again, who knows why guys make it and don't,
I think is that the year Myles Garrett went first overall? Because I think after him, that whole
2017 was
there was a pass rusher that went above Derek Barnett.
Yeah, Garrett was 17. He was number 1 overall.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. But I think if you look at the rest of that class, I think Tack McKinley might have been in this group as well, and has not had a fantastic career by any means.
I ended by saying my sense is Barnett will be a polarizing player in NFL draft rooms, college production versus lack of ideal traits.
There you go. And that's kind of summed up his career so far. And if you play in Philadelphia, you're always a polarizing player. Of course, that's not in the front office. That's just, among the people.
That's right. That's right.
That's it. Whoa, my light just fell. So pardon for the distraction there. All right. So Adam was talking about getting into linebacker, and that's why we should work from D-line to linebacker here, because we've got some tweener players, Greg, who are good, like Ryan Kerrigan, for example. You said he has something left in the tank, and he's a player who will probably be used like that, a stand-up pass rushing linebacker. You still believe he's shown enough to make an impact in this league?
Yeah, he's not going to play 50 snaps a game for sure. Yeah. No. Plus, he's a guy who could perhaps help Derek Barnett, because Kerrigan knows how to rush the quarterback. He's a technique guy. He's a fundamentals guy. He knows how to use his hands. He knows how to study the players he's playing against. Maybe he can help Barnett, because in some ways they're similar, because Barnett is not that explosive, twitchy guy. That's not what Barnett is. Kerrigan wasn't that guy either.
So Kerrigan made himself to be a player. What is it that Kerrigan does so well? And obviously, how he's tormented the Eagles over the years, Greg. What does he do so well how does he win a lot?
He wins using his hands and playing off contact. In this league, you can't just run around tackles. Do you see that once in a while with those great bendy guys like Von Miller when he's at his best? But when you watch the Boses, they're a great example of this. They have such a great feel for using their hands and playing off contact, because you are going to get blocked. So it's how do you play off contact? Kerrigan has been really, really good at that.
Knowing what you know from a Mike Zimmer defense and how it's going to look a lot different here in Philadelphia and similar, do you feel like Jannard Avery, with his pass rush and his quickness, can be used in some kind of pass rushing linebacker capacity that can finally make him look like the fourth round pick that he was and what he was brought here to be?
I don't know the answer to that, because the pass rushing linebacker in Minnesota is Anthony Barr. And Anthony Barr is 6'5", and Jannard Avery is 5'11", 6 feet.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with a totally different body type. So I don't know the answer to that. The guy who I think, and again, to me, there's two players who fit that role better, and one's a rookie and one's a second-year player. So I have no idea where they stand. But I think Davion Taylor and Patrick Johnson from Tulane, whose tape I loved, by the way. In fact, I thought Patrick Johnson reminded me very much of Shaq Barrett. And keep in mind, Shaq Barrett, for his first 4 years in Denver, no one even knew who Shaq Barrett was.
Right.
So to me, Taylor and Johnson Johnson more than Taylor, because Johnson was a pass rusher in college. So to me, someone like Patrick Johnson ultimately fits that role better, but he's a 7th round pick. So, 7th round picks can get cut, a week into camp, or they can be stars of camp. We don't know the answer to that, but I really liked his tape a lot coming out of college.
Well, linebacker wise, you mentioned Davion Taylor, guy that, came in. We knew that he was probably overdrafted. So far, it looks that to be the case, but he only played 1 year.
Well, he was drafted for a specific reason.
Right. They wanted to play nickel.
Yeah,
right.
So
give us an idea of what you think he could do here.
Well, I think Davion Taylor was a 3rd round pick, because they saw him in this league where you play in your sub 70% of the time, if not more. I think the Eagles, they saw him as a guy that has great speed, which he does. And can play in your sub, and perhaps can run with tight ends, can match up to backs. They saw him as that guy. Off his rookie season, I can't speak to anything. The guy hardly played any snaps. But Davion Taylor is a really, really good athlete. I mean, he can play in space. He can play sideline to sideline with speed and range. He doesn't have great play strength. He doesn't play with power, but he did play with aggression. He did take on blocks when he had to. I thought he played with competitiveness. I kind of liked his tape. Now, he's a certain kind of player. Now you get into all the other issues, the coaching, his ability to assimilate all the information. Does he recognize formations? All the things that go into this now. But he's a really good athlete.
Eric Wilson.
He ran a 4.49 as a linebacker.
Yeah.
He's explosive.
Does he strike you as someone, Greg, who might be better off, in a man where it's like, go cover that guy and run with him, but may struggle in a zone where you have to drop and carry and have spatial awareness? And as you were talking about the diagnosing, because we're expecting here to probably see more zone type of coverages with what Jonathan Gannon wants to do.
Well, he did this in college. He played a lot of underneath zone, in multiple zone coverage concepts. He has experience doing it. So, all I can do is tell you what his college tape showed. Right. I don't know what he was like in practice. I'm sure that they viewed the previous staff felt that he wasn't ready, and that's fine. He's a rookie. So, but he has a skill set that fits today's NFL.
Well, a guy was brought into Philly because he knows the defense is Eric Wilson. Greg, you've seen him. How do you think he'll fit in with this defense here?
I like Eric Wilson. I've seen a lot of Minnesota's defense, over the years, because they've been for the most part a good defense. I just think he's a solid linebacker. I don't think he's spectacular. I don't think he's special. I think he was brought in because he knows this defense. He'll know the terminology. He'll know the adjustments. He'll know all of those things. And I think he can line up and play both on the outside, and he can play on the ball and he can play stacked. He can play both those positions, and he can help teach everybody else the defense because he knows it.
How do you feel about Alex Singleton in
I
relation
thought he
to
played
Garrett
really
Wilson.
well last year. He
Mhm.
predominantly played on the strong side. I guess what we don't know, and this is why you go through training camp, is who's going to play in the sub. Because Minnesota, if Gannon's going to follow the Minnesota approach, they played nickel, not dime, because they kept Kendricks and Barr on the field.
Mhm.
So if they do that, who are going to be the two linebackers on the field?
Well, we know that one of them is definitely going to be Eric Wilson. After that, nobody knows.
Right, because it's not going to be TJ Edwards, clearly.
Yep.
Is it Singleton? Is it Taylor? This is what we don't know, because we don't know. We don't know. See, to me, Avery's not that guy. Avery's not going to play unless you see him as a potential pass rusher. So I don't know.
We've talked about maybe having different situational nickel format, which a lot of coaches do anyway. But you've got maybe a different kind of nickel out there if you're trying to hit the quarterback on 3rd and 7. Maybe a different one if it's 3rd and 2, and you want a little bit. You want to be a nickel, but you want to stop the run, so you may have more natural linebackers like Singleton and Wilson out there.
Yeah, and teams do that. I mean, if it's 3rd and 2, and much of this is also dependent on who the offense puts on the field.
Right.
But Singleton, I thought, played really well. He had a stretch last year of like 5-6 games in a row where he played literally every snap.
Yep.
And I thought he played well.
Yes. Yeah, no, it should be an interesting competition there at linebacker. Want to get into the secondary now? We will.
Darius Slay, and we're done. Okay, see you later.
Yeah. Let's talk about Slay to start off, because he was kind of put in a rough position, but he also had some strong. I guess I'll ask you, Greg, because you could say he struggled against the Devontae Adams, the Claypools, and there's another receiver that came DK Metcalf. But in a lot of those plays, he's there. Right. It's just the receiver was making the play. So I don't know how – it's not like he got lost or he just got outbeat. He just sometimes got out-muscled for the ball by bigger guys. So how did you see his year?
I think Darius Slay is a good corner. I think that corners who get thrown – when the ball's thrown to them a lot, they're going to get beat, and it's a very visible, lonely position. So I don't think Darius Slay is a problem. I think he's a good corner. I think he's got the mindset to line up and play man. I think he wants to line up and play man. When you do that, you get beat once in a while. There's a lot of good receivers in this league. The league is set up for corners to get beat. So I don't think there's any problem with Darius Slay. It's the rest of the corner position that is a huge problem, because right now they don't really have any corners. And, you're just being honest. They do not have a starting quality outside corner on their roster right now, unless somebody, that we don't know about, just has a great camp, and, all of a sudden we go, wow, look at that guy. But they do not have a starting quality outside corner opposite Darius Slay.
Before you even jump in on that, because I want, that's something we talk about, and I want you to weigh in on it. But I also want to stop just to let our friends remember that they should check out our other friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of Philadelphia's professional sports teams. Great podcast, great content. Check them out at PHLSportsNation.com, and also their Twitter handle at PHLSportsNation. And we'll pause real quick for another word from our great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. And if you do stop into Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them that Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get the best deal. So we were talking about the cornerback situation opposite Darius Slay. And Adam, that's something that we've talked about a lot. And so far, we're still waiting on that. And you made a great point, Adam. It may not happen before the start of camp.
No,
it may happen in camp.
The thing that I've learned about this business is, and the teams will always remind you of this, the season starts in September, doesn't start in July 1st. Or July 5th, whatever.
Right.
Now, you can't count on a Ronald Darby type trade. Those rarely happen. Teams don't trade starting corners. It has to take an extreme situation that was. He didn't fit their scheme in Buffalo when Sean McDermott came in there. But they obviously, Buffalo had their druthers. They would have moved him during the draft, not wait until August. But okay, fine. That was 2017. Geoff, a guy you and I have talked about a lot is Steven Nelson. We know the Eagles have interest in him. Not saying they're going to sign him. He may sign somewhere else. But Greg, you've seen Steven Nelson. Right. So break down Steven Nelson's tape for us, if you would.
Steven Nelson is shorter than ideally desired corner who is physical, competitive, feisty. He can play man and zone. He's one of those guys you want because of the way in which he plays. He's super, super competitive. He'd be a major upgrade if they were able to sign him.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean,
there you go.
Right now, I think any corner who's played 5 or 6 years would be a major upgrade. I want to ask you about Zach McPherson. They drafted him in the 4th round. One thing that stands out to me, Greg, is that his snaps in the slot last year were way up compared to the year before when he was mostly an outside corner. So they saw some good versatility in him at Texas Tech to be able to put him in the inside. Now, the Eagles don't need another slot corner, but the bottom line is you're looking about a guy who 2-3 years you want to see what he's best at, and he seems to have some good versatility and ball skills. What did you see from Zach McPherson?
Yeah, I'm just being honest. He was the one guy they drafted who, in my tape study, I didn't love. But again, he's a 4th round pick.
Right.
I made the point that he's going to be in the eye of the beholder as you project and transition him. He's not a high-level athlete. He possesses no special traits that jump off the film, but he brings outstanding versatility, as you said, Geoff. He can play outside. He can play inside. He played some safety at Texas Tech last year. So I don't know how they see him. Is he a slot guy? Is he an outside corner? I don't know how they see him. But he's not a sudden explosive guy. He's more measured. He's methodical. I had questions about his long speed to run with vertical routes. I thought he was a little segmented in his lower body movement, which is a word I learned from my good buddy Dave McGinnis, who coached for years in the NFL. It's a great word, in terms of how guys move when you look at their lower body. I didn't see him as a big time prospect by any means.
That'll fit in well with the rest of the Eagles corners. Michael Jacquet only played a little bit, but he's got good size, Greg. And he did have to get in there. I forget which game he got in there and held him. He played decently. What was it, Green Bay, Adam? And then the next week against Dallas, he got exposed.
First Dallas game, I don't remember.
One of those games, yeah.
Yeah, he has some intriguing traits because of his length. He has very little experience playing corner. I would view this as a really big training camp for him, because he's got traits that you look for at corner, but he only played corner for 2 years in college and then with the Eagles. And, obviously he was exposed by good receivers, which was not unexpected. Right. So, again, he's going to be in that mix, but he's got length and he's got some athletic traits that you like a lot.
Right. Josiah Scott is a guy they traded for. They got from Jacksonville. I don't know if you've seen him, but our understanding is they're going to work him on the outside at first, but he's also not a big guy. Okay, you mentioned Chiquetta as a guy who's got size, so I don't know if you've seen Scott, but we understand.
Is he the Michigan State kid?
Yes, he is. Yes.
Yeah, I think he's more of a slot guy.
Yeah,
but again, I don't know him in detail, but he strikes me as more of a slot guy.
Body type, it's funny because he's been compared coming out of college to Avonte Maddox, who we've talked about with the Eagles being probably more of a slot guy.
Well, it's so interesting, the difference between the NFL and college. Avonte Maddox played boundary corner at Pitt, but boundary corner in college there's not a lot of room there, because the hash marks are 5.5, 6 yards wider. So he played boundary corner at Pitt and he was fine at it, but to me, he's not an outside corner in the NFL.
Can you tell, he talked about really needing to improve his eye discipline and the new coaching staff working with him on that. Is that something that you can see on tape, that he peeks into the backfield too much?
Yeah.
He lose. Okay. You can, that's pretty obvious with him.
Eye discipline. I've been fortunate enough in my career to sit in training camp on defensive back meetings, and leverage and eye discipline is talked about all the time, particularly in zone. Man, theoretically, eye discipline shouldn't be a problem, because if you're playing man, your eyes should be on your man. Although I think Maddox had a problem even in man a couple of times this year with his eyes being in the wrong place. But eye discipline is critical in zone, because you have to have an understanding of route concepts. You have to have an understanding of how it's taught. Because where are you looking? If you're playing outside, let's say, and it's a 2-by-2 set, meaning there's 2 receivers to your side. Okay. where are your eyes? How is it taught? If you're outside, are you looking at number 2 first to see what he does? Is your eye solely on number 1? It's all how it's taught.
Mm-hmm.
And then your eyes have to respond accordingly, because you can get beat in zone if your eyes are in the wrong place. I see it all the time on tape.
Sure. Well, that's going to be an amazing competition at camp. Just figuring out who's going to be the second outside in the slot.
It will be, but I got to tell you, if they could just leave Maddox in the slot and not move him outside, I think he'd be way better off. Not ask him to do. They just asked him to do way too much, and we know why, because they just didn't have any bodies. But this year, hopefully, that they'll get a veteran, whether it's Steven Nelson or somebody else, by the start of training camp would help. Obviously, by the start of the regular season. But let's go over to safety, where another guy who knows the defense, Greg, Anthony Harris is here from Minnesota. He's an older player at 30, but we know he had the one monster year, Greg. So what did you see from him last season?
I don't think he was as good last year, but I think he's a solid NFL safety who knows this system. There's a lot of split safety in this system. There's a lot of cover 4, quarters coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Harris is good at that. So that's why they got him, because, again, you always love to get players who, in a sense, can teach the other players, because he knows this system. You don't have to teach him how to play this system. So, I think he's another one of those guys. He's like Eric Wilson. He's not a star, but you can line up and play with him. He won't make mental mistakes. He does have some ball hawking ability. He does. There's a guy that normally plays with his eyes well. He sees things. The question is, who's going to be the other safety?
Well, Kayvon Wallace. I know he barely played last season, but did you like him coming out of college?
Yeah, he's the Clemson kid. He's an aggressive, competitive, tough kid. He's short. Don't know. Again, they're gonna. He's not a post safety, but they're probably not going to play a ton of that relative to playing more split safety. So possibly, I almost felt like Wallace, though, was almost like a linebacker in a safety's body. That his game was better closer to the line of scrimmage, which means he can play in quarters, because quarter safeties have run responsibilities as well.
Speaking of linebacker in a safety's body, they drafted the kid out of LSU, Jacoby Stevens, I believe, who was a safety at LSU, that they're going to try to look at linebacker, although they may look at him as a hybrid and work him out in both areas. Do you recall what you thought of him?
Yeah, I thought he had average to below average athleticism. I thought his play speed wasn't very good. I didn't like his tape very much. I mean, I think you do have to transition him to linebacker. I don't think he can play safety in the NFL. Word I heard was that he played at LSU at close to 230, but weighed 216 at the Senior Bowl. So I don't know.
Wow.
Again, I don't know what all this means.
Right.
I think I'd be surprised if he was around. I mean, the crazy thing about a guy like this is he was a 5-star recruit of the state of Tennessee. He was viewed as the nation's top safety prospect. Wow. So I don't know what happened, but he, on tape, he just really looked athletically limited to me, really athletically limited.
Greg, one guy I wanted to bring up, because I know you talked about him on our post draft show. We forgot to mention him at least I don't remember hearing you talk about it. Teron Jackson, the kid from Coastal Carolina. I know you really liked him. I thought, if I recall correctly, you saw something from him.
Teron Jackson, he's the Coastal Carolina kid.
Yeah,
he's a little shorter than you like.
Yeah,
I think he would need significant development to be an edge player. He plays hard. He's got an outstanding playing personality. He's super competitive. He's got some short area quickness. He can defend the run. He doesn't have any real sudden burst off the ball to win off the edge. He doesn't play with great velocity. I mean, another late round type guy without lacking the ideal traits, and that's what later round guys are.
Yep, got it. Okay.
I thought I remember you telling us after the draft you almost thought of him or could see him as an interior run defender more so than an edge rusher. Does that ring a bell to you, or maybe just an interior nickel guy?
I don't know if I said that. He
Okay.
clearly lacks the needed length that you'd like to see to play on the outside. Now, ultimately, you could look at Brandon Graham. Of course, he was a top 15 pick in a draft. He'd have to become that kind of player.
Gotcha.
Now, he's not Brandon Graham, or he wouldn't have been picked where he was.
No, it's funny because on Brandon Graham, there were teams for that draft in 2010 that did not have a first-round grade on him because his arms were too short.
Yeah.
And that's what Greg's saying is like, if you're not long enough, you've got to make up for it. In other words, he's 6'2", 254 at his pro day, and arm length isn't bad at 33 1/4. Actually, it's not too bad for it's actually decent for a lineman, but he doesn't play longer. No. And that's it. He's going to be an interesting player because they've got a lot. The whole summary of this defense is, guys, let's see if you agree with this. There's a lot of opportunity here for backups to play a little bit more than we expect. You could talk about the tape looks like one thing, but the fact of the matter is there are so many jobs open for the first time in like 5 or 6 years. Somebody could come out here and surprise you.
Yeah, I mean, this is like we said at the beginning. I mean, Geoff, when you were kind of introing the whole Eagles team, there's a lot of mystery here. You know, there's a lot of, we started by talking about Hurts in the secondary. Those are the obvious things, but there's a lot of competition here. I mean, look, the O-line, other than left tackle, doesn't have a lot of competition if everybody's healthy. The starting four on the D-line, if everybody's healthy, doesn't have a lot of competition. But other than that, there's a lot of competition here. I mean, look, they want Smith and Rager to be, to play a lot of snaps, obviously a wideout. But I mean, Rager's a second-year guy. Smith's a rookie. I know he's the 11th pick player chosen, or the 10th, whatever he was, and they traded up for him. So, barring anything unforeseen, he's playing. But he's a rookie.
Right. All right, that is gonna do it. I think we've got offense, defense, coaching staff. Greg, thanks so much. That was a very insightful breakdown. Maybe our most insightful and in-depth one ever of the Eagles at this time of the year.
I thought that was just a rehearsal. We're gonna now do
I'm gonna hit record right now.
Yeah, okay.
wait, hang on. We got it. We haven't done this before. We must ask you about special teams. Could you break down Jake Elliott?
No.
All right, thank you. Move on.
I'm going to hit end record now.
I just haven't gotten to long snappers yet, Adam.
Rick Lovato, you don't have. Okay, all right.
Well, stay tuned for our special 3-part series. Kicking, punting, and lawn snapping with Greg
Geoff,
Cosell.
When we write Greg that check, could you just dock him for $5? He said he hasn't watched Rick Lovato, so I'm not happy about that.
$5 per specialist, so 3 altogether, or all right. No, really, Greg, thanks so much. I mean, you've done a great job helping us break down all 4 teams. It's going to be we're all getting excited for football season. It's been a wonderful experience to have you on the show with us doing this, and we really appreciate it. The fans love you. And I know that you'll be back. We'll have the pregame show. We'll be in mid-season form, hopefully before the season, so that we go hit the ground rocking and rolling.
Already, it's crazy. Early July. Oh my God!
I know. It's crazy. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. Big thanks to our producer Hunter Brody. Check him out on YouTube. His channel is called Sports Talk with Broads. His Twitter account @Broads81. His website is broadsmedia.com. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.